I am here with the one and only Contessa Gayles. She's the director of a new film on Netflix called Songs from the Hole, and I got a chance to see this at a screening a few weeks ago. I was moved by this film, and I say, Contessa, we have to have a conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Jericka. I'm really glad that the film resonated with you, and I appreciate the space to talk about it.
And it's not only resonating with me because it's been out a little over a week now. I'm
Mhm.
sure you're getting a lot of feedback. I've heard from people who've been victims of crime who have said this film really helped me understand better that there is redemption, there is forgiveness in all of this. Talk to us about why this story, because I'm sure you get people coming at you all the time with ideas. You should do a documentary on this, you should do a documentary on that. But why did you choose to invest the last 6 years of
Mhm.
your time before getting to this point on this film?
It's a big question, but there was so much that I saw as far as potential to help people heal with this story. First and foremost, the story itself really provides this real life example of ways that we can respond to violence and harm without introducing more violence and more harm into the equation, and to respond in ways that are healing, that are restorative, that have accountability at the center, but are not revolving around punishment.
Hmm.
That's really what I saw in the story of James JJ88 Jacobs, who's the protagonist of the film and my collaborator on this project. Spoiler alert, as he's incarcerated, he meets the man who killed his brother. When James was 15, he took a life, and 3 days later, his brother's life was taken. And it was 10 years into serving his sentence that he learned that he was incarcerated with the man who killed his brother. And we tell that story of the past and what happened when that realization came into the fore, and they had a confrontation. And I won't say much more from there, but there was really so much potential in that story. And actually, I first heard the story when I was filming a different documentary, my first feature film called The Feminist on Cell Block Y. I was working for CNN at the time when I was making that film, and James was a participant in the group that I was filming. It was a group that was centered on incarcerated men learning about patriarchy and reading feminist literature and unlearning toxic masculinity and identifying ways that that showed up in their lives. It was started by an incarcerated man named Richie Reseda, who is now the producer of Songs from the Hole. And while Richie was leading that group, James was a participant in the group, and he shared just a little bit of this story that
Hmm.
is now at the center of Songs from the Hole. And that's where I got to see just how it deeply impacted the other incarcerated men around him, the story of forgiveness. And it was the last day of filming that documentary. I was in the gym with Richie and with James, and Richie was on the keyboard. There's like a rental keyboard in the prison, and he had it on top of a trash can, and he was on the keys. And James, JJ88 is his artist name, so I'll call him 88 sometimes. 88 was rapping and singing. Songs, and some of the guys were gathered around their friends and they knew all the lyrics. And I just saw what a beautiful storyteller he was through his music. And it was a year after The Feminist on Cell Block Y came out that, you know, at the time that I filmed that little moment, I didn't think much of it besides, these guys are really talented. But a
Hmm.
year after that film came out, they approached me about potentially working on a visual album together. And over the course of our collaboration and development, we came up with the format of the documentary visual album, which you'll see in Songs from the Hole. But it was both the story itself and the music, the deep storytelling in the music, and how inextricably linked the music was to 88's story. And then I learned the context in which that music was made, which was after that confrontation with the man who killed his brother. Um, and I just knew that there was so many layers and so many entry points for fans of music, fans of hip hop and soul, fans of documentary, folks that might be interested in incarceration and storytelling around that. There was a lot of entry points for a lot of different people to come and get their healing.
Hmm. I say layered is definitely one way to tell, what this film is about. And even when I talked about possibly coming on the CBS morning show or our streaming platform, I thought to myself, do you have JJ88 there?
Mm,
Or do you only talk to Contessa? Because I went into this honestly, and I like to sometimes do this. I did not know what this was about. I was
mm,
invited by a friend, Felton, who said you should really come check out this screening. It's a great film. I didn't want to do the research to get a sense. I like going in there just not really understanding what I'm about to see. But the first 10, 15 minutes, you feel that lump in your throat
mm,
of just like sadness because not only do I know someone or I've covered people
mm,
like JJ88 or been in courtrooms where, you have both families that
mhm,
are dealing with grief and struggle. Um, you wonder, where is this going? And then, like you said, the layers of, and then the brother is killed. And then, he's 15 years old going into the system. Um, it's a really well told, well done piece of art, and I really hope people get a chance to support it and see it. How would you describe your style?
hmm. I think story always dictates form for me and my storytelling. In this case, the visual album documentary format, in terms of the artistic approach, was something that we were kind of making up as we went along.
Mm.
But we knew that, at the outset, the music was going to be the center of the storytelling and that we would build everything else, all of the family story and the backstory of the past around that music. And so I think just paying attention to what the story is telling you and letting that inform the way you're telling it. Um, we were really intentional with this film that we didn't want it to feel like a typical or a familiar incarceration documentary. There's many of those films that do a lot of things really well, but for us, this was really a music film first and foremost. And it happens to be the case that the artist at the center is incarcerated and that there's all of this context around his incarceration and the harm that he had caused and that his family had experienced losing their son and their brother, and that they could inhabit all of these complex themes of being on both sides of really deadly violence and coming out on the other side of that through the music with healing and hope and restoration and redemption and the capacity to contribute to community through the art, through the storytelling, through sharing one's experiences. um, and so I think also what unites all of my projects is this real desire to want to help people, and in particular, Black people, heal. I've told stories that kind of run the gamut from, I did a short film called Founder Girls, which is about a historically Black summer camp in South Texas. I've done a film called The Debutantes, which is a coming of age story of Black girls being presented to society and learning who they are as they are going out into the world. And I think what unites them, in addition to just like this intimate look at Black people and Black community coming together, is to be able to show people that our stories are on a really wide spectrum. I think oftentimes we're kind of fed storytelling and representation of ourselves that is on other ends of the extreme, and I want to be able to just add nuance and complexity to our representation as people of color, as Black people in particular.
So, Contessa, we were destined to do this, and here's why. My daughter went to see the screening of Debutantes about a year and a half ago.
No way.
Elise Shorland, who used to work at CBS Mornings,
Yes, my
is on that. And she
producer.
called me and said, "Hey, can you make this?" I couldn't make it because I believe it was on a weekend. But my daughter went with her father and she loved it. When I
Wow.
realized you were on that, I was like, oh my gosh, wait till I tell her. Um,
Yes.
yeah, I think it's great. And like you said, it is nuanced, it's different. It adds layers. I love that it allows you to see the humanity in
Mhm.
all of it. I really do. I think at a time like this, we should be leaning into, what is real, which is that we all have feelings, we all have hurts, we all have situations where we find ourselves having to forgive and love and redemption. And I think all of that is in that story, Songs from the Hole. Is there anything that you look at now that you wish you would have done differently? And I know that's a tough question because I would imagine when you are done and it's finished, you're like, this is great. Let's go. We're not making any more edits. But do you wish you had more time? Are there parts or interviews that didn't make it that you struggled with, like, oh, I wish we could have got that in there?
I'm really proud of what we have put together and what is out in the world right now. I can't say that I would do anything differently because every part of this journey has led us to where we are, and I'm really proud of where we are. And I think that this was a film that was incredibly focused on process and like the journey itself being as important, if not more important, than the final product,
Mm-hmm.
the final film. Because we were so intentional about it being a collaboration with 88 while he was incarcerated, with Richie, who's formerly incarcerated, like fresh out when we started working on this project together. Um, and then all of the choices that we made along the way to just do things a little bit differently, and to do things really like centering the folks that are most impacted by the subject matter and the themes in the film. Um, I'm really like caring for each other throughout the process and holding each other. It wasn't just a professional collaboration, it was really a friendship and family that we were building as we made it. So because that was at the center, I wouldn't change anything.
Describe some of the imagery that you're going to see in this film.
Mm.
The fact that there's celebration in a prison space.
Hmm.
Um, the decisions you made with having some acting, but then real pictures from James's life. Describe some of the imagery and why it was so important to not just do a film that is based on the actual characters, but also adding in this other measure where you really feel like you're there in the front yard when James is playing with his brother and sister. Even the colors and the clothing are the pictures, matched very closely.
This film is deeply inspired by memory and by dreams. So a lot of the kind of fictionalized imagery that you see that's set to 88's music for the visual album components of the film are inspired by real events or real emotions or themes that are very true to 88 and his family's life and experience, and to a lot of people's lives and experience. And so I was thinking about how do we represent memory and how do we represent dreams, and how do we experience them? And it really was, as we're centered in the space of the whole solitary confinement with 88, like a void, a black, dark space. And then we're just putting little pieces of collage of, a memory from when he was 12 and he's on the yard. And it's inspired by, real photographs that we have from the archive of the family, or videotape of his dad who's a pastor preaching. And we take elements of things in real life, and then we had actors kind of embodying each of the characters, each of the family members, and 88 through childhood and into adulthood. And and they're giving their embodiment and their portrayal of these themes and of these moments from memories, but also just like the experience of being a Black mother who's lost one son to the system and one son to murder. Like, what does that feel like in your body? What does, metaphorically, how do we represent that sense of loss? Um, we have a lot of handwriting from James from when he was incarcerated. His original lyrics, his original screenplay notes from the first drafts of the treatments for the music videos in the film, journal entries, and we really rely heavily on that visually, as well as the phone calls that I started recording with 88, the prison phone calls, which are 15 minutes long at a time. They'll cut you off and just hang up the phone mid-sentence. But that's primarily how we communicated that way and through letters and in the mail. And so we really incorporated a lot of those elements to make him feel as present as possible as the protagonist who's leading you through his story, and who's letting you into his internal world. A lot of, what we did with the actor portrayals and all of that was trying to represent his internal space, um, and his imagination. And there's no limits with what you can do when you're just representing imagination. So while it's inspired by true events and real people, we dabble in magical realism and different things. But we wanted him to feel as present as possible because you never actually see him on camera. We don't go into the prison and interview him on camera. So he needed to feel present, but we also wanted the audience to experience him the same way that his family and loved ones experience him as he's incarcerated, which is primarily at a distance and primarily through phone calls and through letters, to just give the audience a glimpse of what that might feel like. And well, you do eventually see him on camera, but we'll save
Spoiler
that
alert.
for a spoiler alert.
Did you ever get a chance to speak to the family of the person James killed?
No, and as much as I can say about that is that we invited them to participate, and for their privacy and consent, didn't include them or their names in the film, based on the results of that outreach.
Okay. So Contessa Gayles from Buffalo, New York, representing the upstate area. Are you proud of being from Buffalo? Should I not have called that out?
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
No, my family runs deep in Buffalo.
Yes. Go Bills. What is next? What can we expect to see from you? I mean, this is a big moment, and I know you've been talking about this film for over a year now because it was released actually in 2024. But what are you working on now?
It is a big, big lift to put something like this out in the world. So I'm working on relaxing.
Okay, self-care, that's good.
And I think, when the next story that feels really like worth the effort and the sacrifice and the, all of this of yourself that you pour into doing something like this, because you want to do it right and you want to do it well. When that comes along, I'm excited, but we'll see.
For people who are filmmakers or thinking about getting into it, what advice would you have? Because again, everybody I know who's in that world, it's years of commitment. I do a story, it's my day. It's
Right.
a couple weeks, and sometimes it's a little bit longer, but yeah, hats off to all of you filmmakers, authors that take a long time to put masterful things together.
I think I would just tell folks to trust their vision, and especially to Black creators and filmmakers, to know that their voices are valuable and worthy and really needed now more than ever. So I just encourage everyone to keep, community at the center and service at the center of your storytelling, and encourage you to just keep doing the work that you're called to do.
Keep going, do the work, keep focused in the community. I like that. Service-minded. Contessa Gayles, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's on Netflix, Songs from the Hole.
Thank you so much, Jericka.
Thank you.